This lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. You hadn't read that?
No.
Well, you got anything that's popping out?
Continuing OJ saga. I heard Clarence Page this morning.
Yeah, what did he
It
say?
was interesting. He said that he was surprised by the verdict, as I was. I mean, I think it's a lot of people. He said that, at least in his workplace, white staffers were turning to black staffers and saying, why are blacks reacting this way? And he said it was a dialogue, and he hopes it happened elsewhere. And all the things that we said about, blacks are much more likely to believe that the cops are willing to do wrong, and that reasonable doubt may be higher. If they state, okay, prove it to me. I mean, really prove it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they did their job. It was not a nullification of and it was a statement to its job, kind of. I just thought it was interesting that.
Yeah, the word get-go, that's why I wasn't too excited about the verdict. I mean, negatively, I think what I hear you saying, he said, I never once thought that there would be only bad coming from it. I said over and over that the police are going to be a little more careful these days, and they're not going to use the N-word too easily and all that kind of stuff, And I think your comment that he made about dialogue, yeah, I think this is. Now there are these extreme segments out there,
But it brings to, it may bring to white America the real disparity in how, kind of the reaction to the verdict may have brought home, we really see some things differently here. How come is that? The other thing is that we went to see Devil in a Blue Dress last night.
I've seen
Which is
it. I forgot it already, but
Denzel Washington. It's a film. It's all the characters in it are black except for a few kind of racist white LA cops.
I can't even
remember. Denzel Washington is a guy who. What's he done? He's done everything. A black actor wore a white T-shirt.
Maybe I didn't see it.
I don't think you saw it. This is based on
I thought we did.
Mosley. It's just out. It's a black writer who writes kind of Raymond Chandler type detective stories.
It had a white gal who was black.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Okay. I know the story now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because the movie's getting rave reviews. I mean, rave
I liked
reviews.
his buddy. He was a killer.
That's right, Mouse.
What did you expect when you left me behind with it?
That's right. You said don't shoot him. I didn't shoot him. But it was a very good, entertaining movie.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike Spike Lee's, it was not just aimed at a black audience.
Right.
And not that Spike Lee's are aimed at just a black audience, but they're often done in a certain kind of way. And it's not an black exploitation film. The film could have been made about Sam Spade, a white guy, as well as about the black guy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And it really humanized, I thought, the black experience, not making it a white experience. I mean, it's still a black experience kind of movie.
I thought it was very timely, actually.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the stuff about the L.A. cops and the we'll plant evidence and you'll be guilty and that kind of stuff was interesting. But
that was made a year ago, you know.
That's right. That's right. So the L.A. cops have a long history, but it's really it's kind of a breakthrough kind of movie in a certain sense in that it's a black author who writes black kind of black character centered detective stories, and he's been very popular in the black community. He's just now breaking into the white community, and it's a way for whites to see what blacks have seen all the time. Well, here's what white life is like, but the thing that struck us is that's right, is that we walked into a movie theater in Valparaiso, and there were 4 people in the theater when we walked in, and 2 more came in. And one couple was a black man and a white woman, and there was Patty and I and 2 other people.
They didn't sell it. That's when I said some people. That's exactly what I meant.
Well, that's what struck me is that here's a movie that is getting rave reviews by the critics in Valparaiso because it's got a black cast. People don't go to see it, and that's just anyway.
And that's the part that Clarence doesn't emphasize too much, maybe. Some people say it's going to heighten the distance. And, it's possible.
Yeah. Well, one thing for sure is that all the lawyers up there commenting on what's going on, none of them know anything.
Yeah.
Can't predictions you can kind of ignore. For this, I don't know if you had something planned for this morning.
Well, this thing with Costas puts me into several modes, knowing that we have to get our mission statement together better. I mean, not better, but we're going to have to deal with it. And then if we could go through very quickly this, just to put something on the table, you don't have to read it word for word. Maribel man was fired. And he got fired right after he was asked if it bothered him, if prayer bothered him. And then in the third paragraph, the third column, Costas told Watson to bow his head and pray with Costas inside the store in front of customers, which were required to say prayers or read Bible passages at staff meetings, etc. Watson alleges he was subjected to the mailing religious tapes and books to his home, suggestions he look for God's help in how to do his job, and that he should attend church in South Haven. This would show he was a good Christian and be good for business. Down the bottom of that column, Florida, if you are willing to be teachable and listen to my discipline, you will prosper here at Costa Foods. Proverbs 10:17 says, he who heeds discipline shows the way to life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. And it's more of the same. And how do you react to that? Bodenstein is representing. That's front page headline.
Yeah. I think Costas is, and this is something that I thought about him before this came up, is that he's heavy-handed with his religion, is that he jams it down people's throats. Does he have a right to do that? Sure. I mean, in
No, I don't get into the right to do that.
in certain realms, but
I really don't want to get into whether Ivan will win the discrimination suit or not.
yeah.
How do you view this in the public, this action? Not the lawsuit, but how he operates and publicly operates. His billboards, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know what his billboards say. I mean, it's a double-edged kind of sword. I mean, he's got a reputation for treating his employees pretty well. But I've had complaints from his employees.
If they kowtow to discipline.
Yeah, I mean, I've had complaints from employees who kowtow to the discipline about some other things as well. But that's, he's not perfect.
Isn't this what upsets you about the Susan Hordes in a daycare?
No. I think, is that in some respects, I mean, I think, it's a difficult line to draw between practicing one's own religion and forcing others to do that too, to practice your religion. Don't you think?
Well, what I'm getting at is, you don't find it difficult on Susan Horde to cut this shit out.
What do you mean?
I mean, run a good daycare. And don't discriminate in that daycare.
Yeah.
Which is what Costas does at the grocery store.
Yeah, I would say
with his employees, he discriminates. If you ain't gonna work there if you're a Muslim.
Well, well, I was trying to be sensitive to the other side of the card, as I tend to do, because I have so much influence from the ACLU to say anything that has anything to do with religion is bad. Is kind of the view, and so I'm, do I think employees ought to be treated that way? No, absolutely not. But what I was trying to get to is a different point: is how can Costas, how can Susan Horde practice her religion and not, run afoul either of the law or of what is.
All right, let me see what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
It has to do with our subject of work, too. They're both working.
Mm-hmm.
They both have jobs, care about their jobs, and making the money. And then you say, fine line between practice and your religion, etc. First of all, this Susan Horde, I'm putting it in quotes now because that's not quite fair to her, but what we are objecting to with Susan, what we think Susan, and this is Marx would call opium of the people. It's exactly the same thing with a different ideology. That's not a non-important statement, but the practice is exactly the same thing.
Which practice are you talking about?
That Marx called the opium of the people.
You're comparing it to what practice?
This and Susan, the bad part of Susan Horde.
You mean jamming religion down people's throats?
Yeah.
Is that an accurate way to characterize it?
Yeah.
being insensitive to.
I might add the difference in the times would be that if you didn't try to jam it down people's throat at Marx's time, you would be strung up, literally. But yeah, and Marx would call this the opium of the people.
What Costas is doing,
and then what Susan Hart pushes.
I'm not, yeah, and I agree. I'm not sure it's fair to Susan Hort to say that she.
No, I'm putting in quotes constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that.
But you know what we're talking about.
It's the desire to say to young people in a school or to employees in an employment situation, not only am I a Christian, but in this place, we're all going to pray together.
I call it Constantinism. Kill a Muslim for Christ is the name of the game.
In enforcing...
Losing a man that's got wife and kids and getting fired is killing a Muslim for Christ kind of thing. Yeah. But I instilled what I'm getting at too much. I mean, it's part of it. I'm just laying in the groundwork. What throughout here, I don't say these things well, but this is not unimportant to me because there'll be some people that take sides in and out of the church on this and so forth.
Sure.
And they don't recognize, Trinity doesn't recognize it's doing the exact same shit in its liberalism, or Emmanuel in its liberalism. We have to investigate what is the ideology at work here. First of all, I'm all over the map for a moment, but religion and faith, I keep trying to say, are two different things. The faith, this is not an expression of the Christian faith. It's exactly the opposite of the Christian faith.
Christ wouldn't fire a worker for Christ.
I would argue that it's a task of the faith to question the ideology at work here, or at Emmanuel, or at Trinity.
Sure.
And that ideology it reeks in this thing is production.
Oh yeah, I mean this is the money changers in the temple.
Yeah, but that's not questioned. This will not be questioned. Not be questioned by mainstream church people.
No, I mean mainstream church people will say it's a shame that Costas can't practice his religion in certain kinds of ways.
Yeah,
and
they like his store, and they might even sense that it gets good business.
Yeah, and
he says it does.
Yeah, and I started out trying to be sensitive to Bill Costas, or I know his son and whatnot, and I know how they operate. And it's not out of he's a bad, evil person. He honestly wants to practice his religion. But
all right, let's stop a minute. I didn't say one word about calling Costas
I know
you did. An evil person. What I did say is Trinity, Emmanuel, all of us are touting this same noise. None of us are questioning the ideology behind this. What's behind this? What was behind Marx's time was the authoritarianism and God is everything and man is nothing. What's behind this is production and man is everything. Ideology, but it's coming out exactly the same. This is a worship of standard of living all the way, and I don't know anybody in Trinity, I'm exaggerating, in Emmanuel who do not worship standard of living. That's what this is about. I would argue.
Well, and I think the other point is that this is Costas using the religion. I mean, you ought to go to church because it's good for business.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what the middle centuries did, justified killing the Muslim for Christ with Bible verses.
Mm-hmm.
We justified slavery with Bible verses, et cetera, et cetera. And this is, but the ideology at work here that no one's questioning is production and standard of living.
And the other thing that's,
excuse me, loyalty and unity for the Bears or for Costas does work. It's good for production. Those folks that do work at Costas probably work harder than most other places, and they're rewarded too, because he knows that's good for production. And that's the unity that you hear about all the time now in the workplace and so forth. Because it will produce more.
If you were to ask Bill Costas, what does think globally, act locally mean here? I mean, you might translate that to, think the faith and put it into practice in your life. And, it's all in the details. And what Costas is, I mean, in some senses,
he's demonstrating that if you got Christ on your side, you will be successful. He says it in here. You will be successful in business.
That's one point. And I guess
the Proverbs quote.
Yeah, I'm on another point. I mean, what it triggers in my mind is all this big, one thing that I keep trying to pay attention in terms of how you act is that it's always brought right down to today, to this time, to this place, to concrete reality,
contemporary,
and the theory, the grand theories are not unconnected to. Well, we got Mary Breland to deal with, and she's a human being, and it doesn't always fit into the theory. And how are we going to deal with that? And for Costas here, the way he deals with somebody who doesn't fit into the theory is he cuts them out. And so the details for him, the broader theory has wiped out the details. You know what I'm saying? Is that he's not acting in his life the way that the theory tells him he ought to act.
And I would say an ideology is at work to allow that to happen.
What do you mean?
He has a sacred.
Which is?
Which is production. Some awfully good Costas killed Muslims for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And paid heavy prices. Are you sure you want to continue?
Yeah, no, fine.
And paid heavy prices.
Nothing's gonna.
Did you hurt your neck, or is it inside?
I think it's, I slept on a ball.
Okay. If you were a red for the last 200 years, your life was in danger. And if you fought the truth, as socialists and communists saw it, your life was in danger. And their answer was to eliminate the Costas. Just as Costas' answer was to eliminate the people who put a little thorn in the side,
Mm-hmm.
Neither one represent the faith. Both represent an ideology of Constantinism as this message will rule the world. And it's the groundwork for bourgeoisieism. and capitalism a la Adam Smith and so forth. Now, the ideologies have changed. The great white father called God, if you were to look in German, all Germans are required to take religion in public schools. It's a question of for the first time. Just come for the first time. And so when I was over there, I looked at their required texts, religion, and they were so happy to show they'd have a breakfast table with mom and daddy. I can't remember exactly, but what they were portraying is what we used to have as the great white father lording over us. That's what it was, and we paid homage to that and authority and cardinals and priests and so forth all the way up. Now we have at the table Jesus, our brother, and we can say anything to him, etc., etc. In both cases, there's an ideology at work, and neither one of them represent the faith. The faith doesn't say man is nothing, as Marx's perception of of the behavior was right on, because what we were expressing, what the Costas were expressing, is man is nothing, God is everything, in the hierarchy. That's not the faith. He didn't send his son to die from nothing. He sent him down to die for a human being. And the incarnation is terribly, terribly important. It's different than any other religion. No other religion has that connection to the human being. And he sent his son down to die for all human beings. Now, thanks to progress, man is everything. God is dead. This is the worship of the new ideology called standard of living, which has been going on about 200 years or so. Everything in here reeks of better business. It's no different than the bears who push loyalty and unity. The team, not individual, so forth and so forth. Same thing.
But the bears don't have any higher faith. I mean, that you can.
They're just using, in this case and in this town, this wouldn't sell at all in near North Side, I don't think. This action, that Costas wouldn't have any customers. I'm exaggerating. I don't know.
Yeah, because they're far too liberal.
They're far too liberal. But they would not be against unity at the store, loyalty as a way of producing, and the reward system is better for both parties, and so forth and so forth.
Well, Costas is doing nothing different than this is the Japanese influence in the work ethic. Is we're a team. We exercise together in the morning. I mean, the Japanese have the same kind of thing. Costas is using a different hook, a different methodology.
Well, we might have learned from the Japanese some of that. That's a little contribution. And this sells in Valpo.
Yeah.
And that's what counts. That's what I'm getting at. That's what counts. That's I don't know. I'm just too top of the head. This disappearing act, Clarence Page. What's disappearing is that as an individual, here's a good example. This guy was promoted. This guy was a hotshot coming up, and he made it to being a manager. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
with one problem: team unity. The disappearing act that Clarence Page is talking about, you, individual, work hard in the workplace and you'll get somewhere. No, it's not quite enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I happen to believe that the Christian faith, when you said think globally, I do think globally all the time. And it's different being in Christendom and thinking globally, because Christendom, when you mention the Japanese, the sun god was everything and controlled life and death, literally. As may other, or the sacred cow, or whatever. Okay. Thinking globally today, there's only one ideology, and that's standard of living.
Spell that out. What you mean by that? I mean, I think I know what you're talking about. But
It's going to McDonald's. It's McDonaldism. It's the ideology is you be good to it and it'll be good to you. The middle class, I'm coming at a lot of ways here, so I know that. The middle class ideology, which was restricted to the West, is now global. It is the only formula for success, material success in the world. There is no other formula. There's no Japanese formula. There's no Beijing formula other than Western bourgeois formula, middle class formula for success. It's the only one at work. Beijing is going to outdo most anybody real soon. You with me a little on what I'm trying to say?
mm-hmm.
You're not going to do your traditional Mayan way and have success in the workplace. As a matter of fact, when I played around with bringing for the first time 3 little piglets to a village compound up in the mountains to raise them and sell them. We're into the middle class formula now. They didn't want to do it. Only a handful of women wanted to do it. Okay? If I were there all the time, I would constantly voice the downside of this procedure. You're not going to survive if you don't do it. If you don't get into the middle class formula for success, the bourgeois formula for success, you will not eat in the global scene today. You will not eat. You used to could eat. You didn't need it. You could eat. Mayans could eat. They all ate pretty decently, probably healthier. And you're not going to do it today. I'm redundant too much here, but it's really important. It is global today, unless you're into the bourgeois system. It's the world. The global is a westernized system today, everywhere.
What about the fact that the
and
Japanese?
That the ideology is production is for Republicans, Democrats, Indians, everywhere. Production is not questioned. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Japanese have just improved on a Western idea.
Oh, sure. They all bring certain things to it, McDonald's in Asia is going to have a few little twists that
the family in Japan is now the company.
Well, the family was a company. Efficiency is going to knock the shit out of that before long. It'll hang on longer because just at certain places, certain things hang on longer. To me, too, I just can't listen to some music, which is here. If I'm going to be in the world and not of it, I better learn that music. But I'm sorry, I'm just too fucking old. Where did we get that? Ed gave me He didn't even mean it for what I'm saying now. He gives me papers for Walt, and from Reutlingen, that's what it was. He has people have heard about, students have heard about Hilltop, and they volunteer. And so we're starting to put together a little list. One came from Reutlingen on email or something like that, or fax or something. My God, I couldn't believe it. The middle paragraph, about 5 lines, I could read. She wants to volunteer. Okay. Now, for about 8 inches were nothing but numbers and letters and jargon that I didn't understand a word that was being said in the last paragraph. I didn't understand a word that was being said. It was E codes and M fax numbers, and I couldn't understand the thing in it. I mean, it was only 4 lines I needed in there.
But was she actually trying to say something, or was that just the address?
No, that's what
the email thing.
That's the email thing from Europe.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
I'm
just saying, there's another language going on out there that I don't understand a word. I understand a few old traditional words. That's all. I don't understand a word that was said. Not a word.
That's just that's like a stamp. That's all.
But I don't understand it at all. Somebody has to understand it.
It's like the address on an envelope. It's not like a stamp. It's like the address on the envelope.
But on the address on the envelope, I can read and understand.
That's right. That's right.
I can't this. And that's in the workplace today more and more, in the bureaucratic workplace. You're still in the old a lot as a lawyer, I'm sure. And the new workplace, including social workers and so forth, they're using a language that's getting farther and farther removed from me. Okay. But anyhow, you asked the question, I think I'm dealing with it, that thinking globally means that we're all in a bourgeois formula, and success is the goal. Competition, number one, success, efficiency is the goal.
Productivity.
And you don't have productivity if you do what Stalin taught. Let's just be the best industrialized country in the world, a la turn of the century mode. That's gone. Then you couldn't get enough workers. You had everybody working. You couldn't get big enough machines. Now we can't get rid of enough workers, and we can't have small enough machines. It's a different world. And it creates a different individual and a different society, and you don't need workers anymore. And who in the hell is going to buy? It's a real problem out there. That's the problem. If you can't work, how are you going to buy? And you're going to reform welfare with work?
And to be worth anything in this society, you have to consume.
Yeah, but see, to be worth anything in this society used to mean this is a disappearing act, work.
That's right.
Now that's you have to consume today.
I think that's a key in a certain kind of sense, because I mean I've noticed it with my kids. They are consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Consuming is an activity. Shopping is something they do. They go downtown and they look in the antique mall. If they got $1, if Dylan's got $1, he'll go down and figure out how to spend it.
Oh, it's incredible.
And when I was a kid, I would go buy a comic book or baseball cards or something, but by and large, my day was not, consuming is something you did every once in a while. It was
practically never for me, because I didn't even know what it was to go shopping.
Yeah, no, shopping's something you did once a year for school clothes or, but.
I went with my mother to Cress's for her to try on all the eyeglasses to see which one fits for a quarter. That was shopping.
I can remember, the way I got things, and I had a little box of them that I gave Dylan. I can remember getting like half a cigarette lighter when I was 9. with a little flint, no lighter fluid or anything, because that was all broken off. But it was, and little knife and a little piece of this, and I'd trade with my buddies. I'd trade my thing for their thing. I wanted a knife badly, and so I traded to this down and out poor white trash guy, and there was some of that, but there's no this spending.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Consumption is a real good description of what we're about today. If you're not a consumer, you're nobody. You're not marketable, and you're nobody.
And your worth is measured by what you have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my kids have everything. I mean, not they don't, but they have.
That's a sub-worth. The number one worth for grown-ups is what you know. There are two classes, very different from Marx's time. The classes today are those that know and those that don't know. If you don't know, you're a client. And you can inherit all the wealth you want, but you're still a nobody unless you maybe use it to know something, which is possible. You can go to Harvard maybe, and whereas if you didn't have any money, you can't even go to junior college. But unless you know how, you're nothing.
Well,
my problem is that I am to be in the world and not of it, and I'm not to be silent. I'm not to coerce. I'm not to use force. I'm to persuade. Dialectics is the way it's at. Respect for difference is where it's at. And how do I attack that? I know I don't attack Mr. Costa. That's been done over and over in the history of the world, and that just makes me no different than the enemy. The enemy is the ideology of the world. The world calls good with a big G, no questions. Production, nobody questions it. Costas doesn't question it. No, Emmanuel doesn't question. My pastors, no theologian questions investments.
Interesting investment. I was just thinking about your point on that, which is kind of like an interesting discovery.
I still, and my action on that, which I won't touch myself, even though I don't want to restrict. That's that no coercion thing. The money we got as gifts for Hilltop is into CDs. I would never do that for my own money, but I'm not going to restrict somebody else from doing it for themselves. I am keenly aware that my action isn't going to do a fucking thing. Except present an oddity and make people think we have difference in the world. It's something like that.
But an attitude that I respect in a lot of people that fight losing battles is that you can't help but continue to fight the battle.
There's no other battle for me. I just don't know how. I have no solutions. I have no solution to this at all.
What, the cost?
How do I deal with that? I got to deal with it, but I have no idea how to deal with it. I have no solution because I see it in a lot more than Mr. Costas. Miller's going out of business because he didn't do the Costa thing probably.
Miller Mark?
Yeah. See, the traditional Christians have something on their side. They're like the Japanese. They know certain traditions work. you know. And I'm saying it poorly, but
What do you mean, the traditional Christian?
well, I mean those that I mean Emmanuel is a very solid institution. Um, Primarily because it allows no dialogue. It's the last place I'd feel comfortable, and that doesn't mean I should dialogue there. It's the one place I should start.
What about Don Williams? Do you think he's that rigid? I mean, I know the old guy Brecher. Brecher was a, you know.
They're all
was
up
no
and down.
discussing
They're all
anything.
up and down. I'm just guessing. Okay, I'm done. Don Williams. Don Williams is tons more open than Brecher theologically to anything that's going on. He wouldn't like this. Okay. On the other hand, I'm not sure he would tolerate critique of investments, interest, fundraising techniques, and what works. I don't think he would.
And would Brecher?
I think Brecher wouldn't either. I think both parties. I think this ideology is so powerful that it has the left and the right. It has ACLU, liberals, conservatives. Nobody's questioning it. Republicans, Democrats, neither one of them question it. They're trying to be efficient on a very serious medical problem. I mean, Medicare problem. And the Republicans are very courageous in a way that they know that problem is there, you know, and they're not courageous in the sense they'd rather hit the poor than the rich. But they know that something's got to be done. The Democrats try to avoid the problem to the next election. I'm being corny and not fair, but it's sort of where it's at. There's a serious financial problem if you're running a business, period. And that's what government is to me, is government is about how to be number one in the world business-wise.
And business, by and large, doesn't have anything to do with
morality. Nothing.
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to say the word that was coming out of my mouth was community. But morality is accurate too.
Yeah, they're both fit.
And part of what's going on is a huge selfishness in our nation, in our world, that comes out of, I think, fear.
Well, this is where Marx, I think, because I don't care if you're socialist and communist or whatever, you have the same attributes that you're leading up to. When push comes to shove, it is human nature to be number one, and all that goes with that. And I've probably told you a million times, but a true story on Vietnam that I have the documentation on. when they were doing the terrorist bombing in Saigon. Stop me if you know the story.
No.
And the Viet Cong and so forth. That was the threat to end the war to the people then, to the chief of staffs and everything else.
Who was doing the terrorist bombs? The North Vietnamese?
Yeah.
Were bombing in Saigon.
Yeah, a restaurant would blow up, and a bank would blow up, and that destroys the will of the people who were shaky already, which way to go. So at all costs, and I happen to know enough about war to know that torture is not new to either side. At all costs, when you captured somebody, you had to get the names of the terrorists. And so Mad King Ludwig never used torture techniques like we used on captured common members, okay? We had new ways, technical ways to torture people that were worse than anything. And they would never give in. And so
they would die.
They would have a traitor court, and it'd be announced in the paper that this guy was a traitor, and but to the guy that died, the revolution lives. He was a hero because it's all based on history. Okay, that's their ideology. All right. So this Vietnamese officer told our folks who worked with us, and let me try. I think you're going around about it the wrong way. And so he would take a dude, a terrorist, live terrorist guy, and become friendly with him, take him to breakfast, so forth, while they're talking this thing over. And then he says, what's going to happen tomorrow? You're not going to trial. You're not going to have a court kangaroo otherwise. You're not going to be announced as a traitor to your country, which makes half the country happy. You're going to makes the whole country happy for different reasons. He didn't give in. You're going to walk across for breakfast before you go to court, and an American truck is going to accidentally back over you and kill you. In the paper, it will say you were killed in an accident. He couldn't handle it. His own death. He now could not handle his own death.
Because it meant nothing.
Meant nothing. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I love that story. It's a true story.
And what did he do? Did he tell?
He talked. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
It's a true story. It's documented.
Mm-hmm.
And see, the communists, because their ideology was history, in part, the stream of history and so forth.
Sure.
You're a hero. And of course, for the sun god, you were a hero too. I mean, you could get your kamikaze bullet and...
If your death has some meaning, you can face it with
no problem.
With bravery.
Or if you're a Nirvana or Buddhist or something, you're going to come back in a hell of a lot better state than I've been in. It hadn't been too good. Et cetera, et cetera. Especially if I die this way. I mean, just think that conductor who killed 200 people by hitting another train rather than hit a cow 2 months ago. I mean, he's got it better now than he ever had it. Now, see, my mind, because we're to love the Lord with all our strength and mind, and that incarnation meant that he died for a human being. And by human being, he meant one who had no answers. but was called to serve his neighbor with all of his heart, soul, and mind, with no answers. Otherwise, he's a robot. If I tell him the answers, then he's a robot, and that isn't what I died for.
Costas is telling them the answers.
He's giving you the answers. That's not biblical at all. I keep saying the Bible is nothing. There's big questions. Who do you say I am? Why are you hiding, King? Who's your neighbor? Do you have any answers?
How, part of this is, I mentioned selfishness a few minutes ago, and this kind of great mean-spiritedness of the Republican agenda now.
Don't forget, Mark says that's not there. Go ahead.
What's not there?
This human nature stuff. Go ahead.
I didn't say it was nature or not nature or anything else. I'm saying that what I see going on is, and I don't think, being self-centered, being, taking care of oneself, one's family, or whatever, is necessarily evil. I think we have to recognize that what we do is something that we do primarily what's in our self-interest to do.
We have to love our neighbors ourselves, meaning we love the shit out of ourselves, and when push comes to shove, I'll tell them who the terrorists are.
Uh-huh. And love your neighbors as yourself. It just means that, loving yourself for some people may mean give me everything, and for others may mean I give away everything because that's a greater reward for myself.
Yeah, and all I'm trying to say, though, is one should be very careful with that statement. I happen to think it's a great statement. I keep saying to everybody who are astounded that I said, any good that I have ever seen starts with self-interest.
Absolutely. No, and I agree
and
with
that's
that.
Contrary to laying your life down for the other. It's contrary to giving your all. But that also recognizes that I am not born, as a Muslim says, perfect. I am born on this side of the fall. I am born with a flaw. And unless something happens, unless my mind and heart and soul and experience, unless something happens, I'm going to take that flaw and make a lot out of it. I'm going to be the leading mafia in the world. You follow me? I'm gonna be the number one world man. Now, if something, however, hits me from the outside, I call it a gift and says, wait a minute. It wasn't always this way, George. Being global does make a new, interesting difference. I could see being a Westerner is better than being a Mayan Indian, maybe at Columbus's time. Now Mayan Indians are seeing being a Westerner is the way to go. It's global. Or I could see vice versa. I could see being a Mayan Indian. I would see a lot of the left hippies became Mayan Indians in quotes. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Until no one did the dishes. And I said, enough of this shit after a while. I'm using these metaphors. So,
Sure.
And it doesn't work. But it used to could work. You could become an Indian, it ain't gonna work anymore. You won't survive. And now we're in a global society. And it's a whole new ballpark. And the only answer here for me is a transcendent creator For me, it's not the sacred cow. It's not America. It's not Republicans, not Democrats. It's not honkies. It's not males. It's not women. I can't find anything. It's not Zionism. I can't find anything that isn't locked into this ideology of westernization. I can't find anything anywhere. Japanese, my God, Maoism, that's a joke. Everything is locked into the bourgeois system. And now, where is it coming from to critique it? I used to could stand in the West and critique the East, or stand in the East and critique the West and survive. I can't do that anymore. And have fun. Can't do it anymore. So my mind says that there has to be a transcendent. My mind also says that that transcendent, there are millions of transcendents out there, but they're not connected to the concrete reality of human beings and where we're at. I mean, they make money on lectures and seminars on bullshit. My mind can't take bullshit. Now, if your mind can take bullshit, especially if you're surviving real well and making $1,000 a lecture or something, it's good bullshit. And if I go to my business sends me to hear that bullshit, and I get rewarded at the business place for paying homage to IBM, then okay. But don't let your mind wander. Don't let it discover that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer and all that goes with that. Don't let it wander. Keep it on your bullshit and your Aspen weekends. Keep it there and you're all right. You're all right. I can't handle that. I guess because of World War II. I don't know. I mean, I saw what the early bullshit did to people. I saw the castration of half the world. I saw it with my own eyes, of what Christendom did to people.
What do you mean?
And as a Southerner, I saw what it did to Niggertown. I saw what slavery did to people in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. I mean, I've been going to the Guatemala, to the Mayan Indians, was like, for me, I saw that, and I walked away from it a lot. I didn't want to stay with me too much. I saw the Mayan Indians all over the world, okay? And I saw their poverty and how things were happening to them and had already happened to them. Going to Guatemala and being with the Mayan Indians, I not only could see what Columbus did clearly and what we're doing now in the name of good. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
no, I understand.
Going to the Mayan Indians is very different for me than it was for Lloyd, because I'd already been around. And I knew in my head all this castration that had been going on. But seeing the Mayan Indians in Guatemala, I now knew, my God, we got to do something because Columbus is gone. We're doing it in the name of Bull's T-shirt, which Mayan Indians wear all over the place. Literally. Bulls. Nobody else but the bulls. And of course, the well-to-do, one or two leaders get get Reebok shoes. So, I can't say how and where the gift came from, but the gift came through, as I've said too many times, probably through war and depression. And South. I didn't say the South. The South, I think the South has made you a little different than a lot of people. I really do. Interesting now that Lutheran churches, the old traditional Episcopal churches, are declining. Have been for quite some time. They still are. the Pentecostals, the Southern Baptists, black and white, on the average, have increased each year 40% in the United States. It's much more than that in India and everywhere else. Catholics are declining and Pentecostals are going up in Catholic countries. This stuff is selling.
Like which stuff?
Pentecostal Costa.
Yeah, Costa. Okay.
That's selling.
They go out and market Christianity.
Oh man. Well, look at the political scene. It will. Most people say it will probably win the election, presidential election. I could care less in one sense. I'm almost of the position of the blacks, like Robert Lee, who said, I hope George Wallace wins. At least everybody's clear where we're at. I think there's a point to that. I haven't examined that real well.
Well, it's.
That's sort of the OJ kind of thing.
I think there's a point to it, but I always resisted the Maoist kind of philosophy of things have to get worse before they get better, and so
I think you're right.
So that you allow things to get worse, and it seems to me that what you're about, and for some reason I don't know how I ended up there. It always seemed to me that you got to make the fight.
So both are right, because the OJ thing is like Wallace winning. On the other hand, it does make for a clear argument. You follow me?
Yeah. No, I mean they were never.
Both parties are right.
No, I didn't say that Maoists were wrong. Is that it did have to get.
It's not our task.
It has to get worse before it gets better. They were right, and that. But it was not my job to make it worse.
Absolutely.
And they took it as their job to heighten the contradictions.
That's
what they did is stupid stuff to heighten the contradictions. And people don't understand heightening the contradictions.
Yeah.
That's terrorism. That's where it leads. It leads to terrorism and to the.
See, I think I'm about the business of hiding the contradictions, but dialectic.
That's right. I mean, you don't do it by
force
oppressing people.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't do it by walking away from the contradictions that are unbelievable out there.
There's, I tell you, there's a whole lot going on right now, right here.
See, I see in everything. I can't pass up a Costa's article in the Bite at the Times.
But it's interesting. It's interesting that you can't. And
or Clarence Page is disappearing at.
Yeah, you say part of what I'm trying to figure out is why can't you stand the bullshit? I mean, you really can't stand the bullshit. You're right. I mean, that's something it's clear, and part of it is how to, and it's something that's infused in you. I mean, it's deep. It's not.
Oh, I have to internalize it like crazy.
It's not a superficial thing. It's something that you're burned up with all the time.
And every now and then in a group, you see it come out of me, and it comes out awful. This is a wonderful thing for me here.
Well, but what I'm trying to, I mean, you mentioned it comes out of the war, poverty in the South.
Mm-hmm. But it's been given to me. I didn't do anything to give it.
I understand.
That's what I mean by give.
I understand, but it's.
I would add one more. When I say the South, being on the outskirts of Lutheranism, where the farther away you are from the Vatican, the more ideological you are. Which the ideology was moralism. That's why when I said my mother had no tattooed on my forehead on sex, the farther away, it's like the Dionysius people and so forth hung in there were a lot longer in the rural part of Greece than Athens. You with me? The father, that's why you had to have black Madonnas. You go to Guatemala today and Antigua and so forth, you go to a big, huge Catholic church that looks like it came out of Warsaw or Madrid and put over here, packed with Mayans, and Mayan incense is burning. Mayan saints are ritualized, and I mean black Madonna kind of stuff all over the place. You know? Not Catholic theology. It's the only way the farther out you get. It's the only way you're gonna have a Catholic is to recognize they're pretty solid in this shit. You follow me?
And they're talking about doing more.
Oh yeah. Now, I'm really off my lid here. But now, with the whole world into science, and knowing that there are no answers in science, we used to think science would answer anything for a period of time, for about 200 years. First, it was God had all the answers. And then the theologians finally saw they were losing and said, no problem. No problem. Science does its thing and we do our thing. No problem. Well, the problem came when science took over everything and God is dead. All answers were now in science and technology. But now the top scientists know that science doesn't have the answers. And so what springs alive, if you were to go to the University of Chicago and check the religions of the scientists who wouldn't touch the word religion 50 years ago. The religion of the scientists takes the freakiest thing, the New Age people, Buddhist people, Zen, all over the map, more than any of the other faculty. You with me a little what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're the most primitive religious people in the world today are top scientists. They're into Marishama yoga. They're into all of them. And I can answer that from the sacred. The one thing that the Grand Inquisitor, more my metaphors here, the Grand Inquisitors know there has to be compensation for living in this rarefied air of artificial life where you can't even open a window. Man is not made to live in high tech, in artificial cities. And there has to be compensation. Spiritualism is the compensation. Costas knows that. He doesn't know it, but he's part of that. The Pentecostals are into spiritualism. The Holy Spirit says me to buy these jeans, take this job. Spiritualism is the compensation for high tech. And the beauty of it is for high tech, it means more high tech. It means more cable TV, more videos, more production, more advertisements. It sells. You follow that spiel I just threw out?
A little. I was thinking that where the scientists are going now is, I just wonder how this fits in. God has all the answers, and then he dies. Science has all the answers, and you find out they really don't. I mean, we may really destroy humans' ability to live on this planet by what we do to it. We're not going to destroy.
The good scientists know that now.
We're not going to destroy life on the planet because the roaches.
So how do they live with themselves?
And spiritualism maybe, but there's this this chaos theory they're running now, which is and I don't understand it all, but if I've got the gloss on it, it's like, the butterfly who flaps its wings in China may cause the hurricane that occurs in the Gulf of Mexico, because everything's connected. But you can't predict how it's going to come out.
So you have to live with yourself.
And you can't control it either.
No, there's a real strong half-truth. We talked about that last time on Galileo. That Galileo discovered you touch here and this happens. So that's the butterfly.
Yeah.
Now, what the scientists that's New Age shit. That's spiritualism to me.
What is?
What you just did, the example you just gave.
Well, I use it because they use it.
Okay. I know they use it. I know they're more into it than anybody, New Age stuff, nature stuff. Now, what they don't use is technology as a system. They don't talk about the S&L 10 years ago, little tiny rural bank that went under and blew the London stock market that night away. They don't talk about the same thing is true of technology as a system. These same scientists continue to worship other experts whom they know nothing about. You as a lawyer know that. I'm not a criminal lawyer or whatever, I'm a tax lawyer. I can't answer that any more than you can. So you worship them. 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 Doctors. Oh, I'm a heart man. I don't know shit about this,
Well,
but I'm trying to say that a doctor that is only into the heart, and a lot of them are only into the heart. Believe me, they don't know if you're male or female when you come in and look at that heart. I know that's true in tonsillectomies because they thought Becky was they didn't know Becky was a girl. And she had her tonsils out. That's a crude example of it makes a difference who Walt is when you play with my heart. I am now discovering that when I said to Hector about vasectomies, I shook him up.
Yeah.
Violated all the research today. Violated all the research.
That's right.
If I'd said it to him before his vasectomy, I'm not so sure he would have gotten a vasectomy.
Yeah.
When I went down to my vasectomy in Florida to get it free from my brother's friend, I had made a mistake. I had no problem. None at all. I mean, it makes no sense not to have it. I don't need any kids. And the article in the Tribune just says it's no problem. It's 10 minutes, which is a lie. And
it doesn't hurt, which is a lie.
Yeah. But no problem. And so there's no problem. I don't want any more kids. And I know the thought of condoms, don't even enter my mind in that world for me. I know that lawyers having problems. This might be the way I'm taking the pills yet. I made a mistake of talking to Hal Barron, who's a Jew. There ain't no way a Jew's going to have a vasectomy, a traditional Jew.
Why?
It's just a violation of the seed and the firstborn and the male and everything else. It's just no way. I can't answer that Jewish theology wise, but I guarantee it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he let me know it's there. Oh God! Now I'm going down with these thoughts in my head, and maybe this isn't. And then my father had never scolded me in my life. I didn't know either one of them knew about it. My mother's on her deathbed practically, and an hour before I'm to leave for my little operation, quietly, or 2 hours before, my father calls me in, and he had heard from my brother that I'm having a vasectomy. Now, his ideology was not as theological as probably the Jewish theology. The Jewish theology, what Hal was talking about was tradition and family.
Yeah.
And what my father was talking about was eunuchs and how the Chinese emperors would castrate everybody and so forth, and they lessened the man out of people.
Well, they confused vasectomy with castration.
Absolutely, 100%. And so the first time in my life, my father emoted, chastised me. I mean, he let me have it. Now I walk out, I got an hour to go, I go outside and, oh my God, how
old are you?
I lose so much track of time. 50, I'm guessing, 55.
Yeah.
Now I'm walking, I am not so damn sure. Before I had no problem whatsoever, none. None. Now, it had nothing to do with whether it's 10 minutes or not. It had a lot to do with who I am, where I'm coming from, tradition, everything. I mean, I sweated blood now. I didn't sweat before. Now I'm sweating. For the first time, I'll say this through. For the first time, Walt Reiner, made a decision to have a vasectomy. I hadn't made it before. Modern society had made it for me. Technique made it for me. Technology had made it for me. Now, the man, Walt Reiner, made the decision. And it was infinitely harder to do. It was hard to do. I don't know if you're following this.
Absolutely, sure.
It was hard to do. Walt, the man, made a decision. Walt, the man, I don't think many people would have done what I did on this last heart episode. You're going to have a stress test. I ain't taking another stress test. And Walt, the man, made that decision. I was scared a little bit, but I had now come, thanks to knowing myself better as a human being and the global scene, all kinds of things. I had now known that these guys are not gods. These guys don't know all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of them are in the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I said, no. It freaked out the head of nurses. It freaked out the nurses. Nobody said that. And that's something nobody had ever said no to these tests while you're in the hospital. I don't know if I'm making my point, but my point is that when you're fooling around with an organ, see, that's what Kinsey, and I'll shut up and then we gotta go. Kinsey is destructive of the human being and what that represented. And we're all into Kinsey. We're all into Kinsey. The pleasure principle. You tickle this and that works, and you tickle that and that works, and et cetera, et cetera. We're into the organ, the sex organ, when I happen to know that sex is, human beings are sexual beings.
Mm-hmm.
But we have separated organs out now. That's where it's at.
It's not technique.
It is technique. Or you mean in truth?
In truth.
In truth, it's not technique.
I mean,
but the joy of sex books are about technique.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that, and that's the thing. That, I mean, technique is fine, but you can learn anything from a book.
I'm not against technique.
And I mean, but techniques, that's the easy part.
And there's a downside.
Yeah, and from my point of view, and that's, I mean, it took me many years of marriage to learn that, I mean, technique was fine. That's all fine. But the And
I needed more of it.
Huh?
I needed more of it.
Maybe, yeah. But you came from a different generation.
That's right. That's right.
I can remember, the only discussion I ever had with my mother about sex, and I've probably told you this before, is that she told me, sex with your father gets better every year. And, she's 60 at the time. And she's not 60, man. She couldn't have been. I'm 17. And think I know everything. I brought my girlfriend home and I said, we're going to sleep together. And she says, not in my house, you're not. And we had this little discussion and where she told me this. And I can't tell you how hopeful that was.
Isn't that interesting? That's very, very interesting.
It's the only information she could have given me that I didn't.
It's a good thought, good point.
And
do you remember Archie Bunker?
Yeah.
What's his wife's name?
Edith.
Edith. I'll never forget Loa either. Edith and her daughter-in-law were sitting at the breakfast table, and they were just gotten married, just come off the honeymoon. Somehow it got on the sex.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know how to say it. The daughter-in-law didn't know how to say it, but she wanted to say what a wonderful time they had.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally asked something like, "How is it with you and Archie?" She says, "With me, it's just like the 4th of July, and bombs going off. It's like the 4th of July." And it says, "Well, with Archie and I, it's a little bit more like Thanksgiving." I'll never forget that one. That's great, isn't it?
But it took me a long time to realize what my mother was talking about.
Yeah. Oh. And the world doesn't help you.
No.
The world doesn't help you.
But it's only when there's a lot to be said about that. But
George,
you gotta go.
My hero said there is no education, no growth apart from dialogue between generations. And he constantly said what's wrong with this global scenario is that's gone.
Let me tell you one more thing.
And that fits what you're saying.
We had Lenny and Susan over last night.
Yeah.
And Susan was asking about, have you talked to Dylan yet about sex? And she says, Lenny won't talk to Joey. And, what are you going to do?
Blah, George.
And I said, I've tried half a dozen times. And he doesn't want to talk to me about it. He's got all the information. They teach it to him in school. He doesn't need to know the technique. And it occurred to me just then, it says, I ought to have the same kind of discussion with him that you had with Mark. Is talk to him about respect for women. He doesn't need to know the techniques. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little early. I don't know what's early anymore.
No, I'm just saying that they know all of the events that can occur.
And they know you and Patty and how you live with each other.
That's right. And so, it's probably...
That's where it's really at.
The discussion I had with my father about the sex act and, love, marriage, all that stuff that went with it that he felt compelled to say, it was just an uncomfortable half an hour.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean anything. Whereas I think that if you talk to them about something that means something that has to do with their relationship,
I think that's the name of the game, and that ought to be developed. That's my kid, Mike was the youngest, I think that you have to really think